The fluorescent lights of courtroom 4B at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse hummed steadily, a flat, indifferent drone that seemed to drill into Eleanor Vance's skull. At 34 weeks pregnant, the hardwood bench beneath her felt like a form of medieval torture. Across the aisle, her husband David sat immaculately composed in a $4,000 Tom Ford suit. He nodded with a polite, concerned expression as his lawyer outlined to the judge how David's catastrophic financial collapse supposedly made it impossible for him to support the wife he was abandoning. Beside him, as if entitled to the space, sat Kira Stratton. Sharp angles, expensive perfume, and a calculated presence. She leaned forward and whispered just loud enough for Eleanor to catch. "Better hope it has his eyes, Ellie. It's the only thing you'll ever get from him." The chill in the courtroom had nothing to do with the air conditioning. It was the Arctic cold of manufactured justice, a place where families were weighed, measured, and dismantled. Eleanor shifted, her hand instinctively resting on the hard swell of her abdomen. The baby kicked, a precise, sharp reminder of the innocent life caught in this toxic spectacle. She was alone. Her lawyer, Sarah Jenkins, a sharp and weary legal aid attorney, shuffled through a mountain of paperwork that felt laughably thin, next to the glossy leather-bound binders stacked before the opposing counsel. David's lawyer, Marcus Thorne, a shark in tailored fabric, spoke in a smooth, mournful baritone. "Your Honor, we have provided full discovery. The Vance development empire, once hailed by the press, is a house of cards, debts, liens, an unforeseen market collapse. Mr. Vance is, for all intents and purposes, bankrupt." Eleanor felt a hysterical laugh rise in her throat. Bankrupt. David, fresh from a last-ditch investor meeting in the Cayman Islands, his crocodile leather shoes tapping impatiently on the marble floor. And then there was Kira. She wasn't just a mistress, she was an exhibit. Sitting at the defendant's table, a paralegal's notepad before her, she might as well have been part of the legal team. Her severe cream-colored dress cost more than Eleanor's entire maternity wardrobe. Every detail of her presence screamed power, a calculated display of the future she was set to inherit, the upgrade who would enjoy the spoils of a marriage she had helped dismantle. Kira's whisper, "Better hope it has his eyes," had landed. With surgical precision, aimed to fracture what little composure Eleanor still possessed. Eleanor turned slightly, meeting Kira's gaze. Kira held it, a small, triumphant smile playing at her lips. She was not here to support David. She was here to watch Eleanor crumble. "Mrs. Vance," Thorne continued, "is requesting lifelong spousal support, 50% of all assets, and full ownership of the marital home on Queens Road. These are the demands of a woman living in a fantasy. My client is pregnant with Mr. Vance's child and has been left with frozen credit cards and an eviction notice," Sarah countered, her voice tight. "We are asking for what is legally hers." "You can't get blood from a stone, counselor," Thorne replied dismissively. Judge Maria Sanchez, in her late 50s with tired eyes that had witnessed every lie a man could tell, peered over her glasses. "Mr. Thorne, while your client's sudden financial evaporation is fascinating, let's stick to the immediate matter. Mrs. Vance's prenatal care, who is paying for it?" David leaned into his microphone. "Your Honor, I just don't have the liquidity. My accounts are frozen." Kira placed a perfectly manicured hand on his arm. "It's been so stressful for him." Judge Sanchez's gaze snapped to Kira. "And you are Kira Stratton?" "Your Honor, I'm Mr. Vance's partner and chief advisor." "I see. You are not, however, a party to this case. Do not speak again unless addressed." Kira's smile tightened, but she nodded, sinking back into her chair. The message was clear. She wasn't just a paramour, she was a partner, the new boss. Eleanor stared at the grain of the wood beneath her hands, trying to anchor herself to something real. She remembered discovering the receipt, not for a hotel, not for lingerie, but for a $12,000 Patek Philippe watch. She had been thrilled, thinking it was an early anniversary gift. She searched the house, eager to find it and savor the surprise. She never did. But 2 weeks later, at the Charlotte benefit ball, she saw it on Kira Stratton's wrist. As Kira laughed and touched David's arm, her head tilted just so. When Eleanor confronted him, the gaslighting was immediate and brutal. "My God, Eleanor, are you insane? She's a client, a major client. That was a closing gift. Are you so insecure, so needy that I can't even do my job?" She had apologized, to him for her suspicion. Now that same woman sat at his table, advising him on leaving his pregnant wife with nothing. The humiliation pressed down like a physical weight, stealing the air from her lungs. She had not just been betrayed, she had been made a fool. And Kira was here for the final public act of mockery. "We will take a short recess," Judge Sanchez announced, "while I review the preliminary asset declaration. We will reconvene in 15 minutes. The gavel cracked and the tension broke. David and Kira rose, smiling, a perfect portrait of a power couple. David didn't even glance at Eleanor as he walked out, Kira's hand firmly planted in the small of his back. The courthouse hallway was a different battlefield. Acoustics were terrible, whispers carried, every tense conversation public property. Eleanor headed to the restroom, needing a moment to splash cold water on her face. Kira was there naturally, standing at the mirror, reapplying a bold blood-red lipstick. She saw Eleanor in the reflection and smiled. "You really shouldn't be here, Kira," Eleanor said, her voice trembling. "Where else would I be?" Kira snapped the lipstick shut. "David's a mess. He needs me to handle this. You? Well, you never were very good under pressure, were you?" "This is a divorce proceeding, not a hostile takeover," Eleanor muttered. "It's both, honey," Kira said, leaning against the counter, taller than Eleanor, even in her sharp heels. "Look, Ellie, some free advice. Take the first offer, whatever it is, because every day you fight this, it's only going to get worse. Marcus Thorne will paint you as a bitter, unstable gold digger. And by the looks of you..." Her eyes swept dismissively over Eleanor's swollen belly. "You're not exactly sympathetic." "I am carrying his child," Eleanor shot back. "You're carrying a consequence," Kira corrected flatly, her voice devoid of emotion. A last-ditch, desperate attempt to trap him hadn't worked. The cruelty stole Eleanor's breath. "You think I got pregnant to trap him? I don't think I know. He'd been telling you he was unhappy for a year. He was sleeping in the guest room and then, miraculously, just as he's about to leave, you're pregnant. It's pathetic." The lies were thick, layered, impossible to untangle. David had been distant, working late, but he swore it was just stress from the downturn. He had been the one to initiate intimacy the night she conceived, after a rare, seemingly perfect dinner. He had called her his rock. It had all been a performance. He had probably come straight from Kira's bed. "He's a liar, Kira. He's lying to you just like he lied to me," Eleanor said. Kira laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Oh, Ellie, that's what wives always say. The difference is, I know what he is. I'm not blinded by love and forever. I'm his partner. I understand his business. You're just the domestic part, the starter wife. And now that part of his life is over." Kira moved toward the door, then paused, hand on the handle. Her eyes landed on Eleanor's stomach with pure disdain. "Oops, careful," Kira said, her voice suddenly loud, dripping with saccharine concern as she accidentally bumped Eleanor's shoulder. "You're carrying a lot of debt." A few other women in the restroom glanced over. Kira leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial hiss. "He told me. He said this whole thing." She gestured vaguely to Eleanor. "Is like dragging an anchor. Don't worry, I'll take good care of him. He needs a partner who can swim, not one who just sinks." She walked out, leaving Eleanor standing in the harsh fluorescent light. the word anchor echoing in the tiled room. Eleanor gripped the edge of the sink, knuckles white. The humiliation was complete. It wasn't just the money. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the replacement. The ease with which Kira had slipped into her life, dissected it, and declared it worthless. Anchor. Something inside Eleanor hardened. The tears of self-pity evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp anger. Kira had made a fatal mistake. She hadn't just mocked a victim, she had given a survivor a reason to fight. This was no longer about fairness. This was about survival. Eleanor left the restroom, ignoring Sarah, who held 2 cups of vending machine coffee, and marched back into courtroom 4B. She sat down, back perfectly straight. When Kira and David returned, Kira shot her a quizzical, amused look. Eleanor just stared back, expression unreadable. Game on. That night, Eleanor sat on the floor of her half-packed apartment. David had cleared out the marital home, claiming it was bank property, and she was now in a sterile, short-term rental, the air smelling of new paint and loneliness. She was supposed to be cataloging assets, but she knew it was a lie. The assets were gone, hidden in a labyrinth of shell corporations and offshore accounts Sarah's limited resources could never untangle. He's too smart, Sarah had warned. These guys plan their exits years in advance. He started liquidating provable assets the day you told him you were pregnant. The timing is damning, but not illegal. He claims he needed the capital to save his business. And Kira? Clean. No assets in her name. No major purchases. She's either a fool or smarter than he is. My money's on the latter. Eleanor closed the laptop. The legal fight was a dead end. David and Kira had built a fortress, but Kira had called her an anchor. Called her pathetic. And that arrogance, it was total, complete. People that arrogant didn't just win, they had to brag. Her mind flashed back not to the fights but to the good times. The gaslighting. She pulled out her old laptop, the one she'd abandoned when David bought her a sleek new tablet. This is better for you, Elle, much simpler. She booted it up. Slow, wheezing like an old engine. She opened a folder untouched for over a year. Her crazy folder, as he'd called it. You and your crazy little recordings. Before she met David, she had been a journalist. She processed the world through words, interviews, stories. Early in their marriage, when he made grand, sweeping promises about the future, she recorded him just for fun. So I can play this back at our 50th anniversary, she'd joke. But later, as the gaslighting escalated, the recordings became a lifeline, proof that she wasn't losing her mind. Click. She played a file from 18 months ago. David's voice, smooth as honey. Elle, I told you the Havenwood project is dead. It's a toxic asset. I'd have to be an idiot to put money into that. Where do you get these ideas? Eleanor's voice hesitant. You mentioned it last week. You said it was your new flagship. David's laugh, casual and dismissive. I said it was a flagship, past tense. You're not listening again. Too stressed. You twist everything. She fast-forwarded to a file 10 months ago, just after discovering the watch receipt. David. Kira Stratton is a shark. I respect her, but I don't like her. She's all business. Elle, you'd hate her. She's cold as ice, Eleanor. She seemed familiar with you at the ball. David, it's called networking. My God, can you just trust me? This jealousy is so unflattering. Eleanor's hands were shaking. He hadn't just lied. He had systematically inverted reality. And then she found the recording she had been searching for. 6 months ago, a dinner party. Kira had been there as a client. Eleanor had been pregnant, though not yet showing. David was drunk, expansive, bragging. Click. Kira's voice laughing. David, you are so old-fashioned with your money. All these properties so tangible. It's adorable. David's voice slurring slightly. It's called real estate, Kira. It's real. No, I like my assets liquid, untraceable. I'm all about shells. A little company here, A little trust there. You can be anyone you want. The trick is to have a clean name and a dirty ledger. David cautioning. You're going to get yourself in trouble, Kira. No, darling. The trouble is getting caught, and I'm just too smart for that. I'm not the type to anchor myself to a losing investment. There it was. Anchor. Not a random insult in a bathroom, her philosophy. Eleanor's heart hammered. Kira was arrogant, and she did brag. She had just handed Eleanor the entire theme of her financial strategy. Shells, a clean name, and a dirty ledger. David's name was toxic, tied to a bankrupt business. He couldn't hide money under his own name. But Kira's name, as Sarah had said, was clean. Eleanor picked up the phone and called Sarah. I know I'm not supposed to call this late, she said, voice low and urgent. But I think I know how they're doing it. Stop looking for David's assets. Start looking for Kira's. Sarah was a bulldog. It's a waste of resources, Eleanor. Subpoenaing her personal finances is a fishing expedition. Judge Sanchez will never approve it. Thorne will argue harassment. It's not harassment if we know what we're looking for, Eleanor insisted. She's not hiding the money for him, she's hiding it with him. She called herself his chief advisor in court. Remember? That's not a girlfriend. That's a partner. A partner in what? His bankrupt company? No, a new one. Kira's philosophy, a clean name. David's name, dirty. Hers isn't. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Okay, let's say you're right. They're moving assets into a new entity under her name. It would have to be recent. Anonymous. Delaware, Nevada, Wyoming. Try Delaware, Eleanor said, recalling a news article about David's complex corporate structuring from years ago. It had always been his playground. For 3 hours, they dug. Sarah ran search after search through state corporate databases. Kira Stratton Investments, KS Holdings. Nothing. It's not here. Eleanor, Sarah said. But Eleanor spotted something over Sarah's shoulder. Wait, you're searching Kira. What's her full name? Kira L. Stratton. The L is probably Lee or Lynn. Try just Stratton, Eleanor urged, and add keywords, holdings, ventures, properties. The screen refreshed. There it was, Stratton Holdings LLC, registered in Delaware. Date of formation, October 14th. Eleanor's blood went cold. October 14th, 3 weeks ago, 2 days after David had been served the final divorce papers. Sarah, I see it, Eleanor whispered. Sarah's voice was electric as she typed, fingers flying across the keyboard. It's a shell. No listed assets, no business purpose. Standard anonymous registration. Listed agent is a law firm in Wilmington. That's it, Eleanor breathed. That was the lifeboat. They were moving everything into that. After the divorce, David would join the company as a consultant. It's a good theory, Sarah said, cautioning, but it's not proof. Just a name in a database. Circumstantial. So let's make it uncircumstantial. We need to get Kira on the stand. Thorne will never allow that. She's not a party to the divorce. But she made herself a party, Eleanor argued, the pieces finally clicking into place. She sat at the defendant's table. She called herself his chief advisor. She spoke to the judge. She had inserted herself into the proceedings. Sarah was quiet for a full minute, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across her face. Oh, that's good, she whispered. Really good. Her arrogance is her undoing. She wanted a front-row seat to your humiliation so badly that she legally entangled herself. What do we do? Eleanor asked. We let Thorne finish his case. We let him bury David in debt. And then we call a rebuttal witness. Who? Kira Stratton. He'll object. He'll say it's not relevant. It is relevant, Sarah said, printing the Stratton Holdings LLC file. It's relevant to the veracity of Mr. Vance's financial disclosures. As his chief advisor, she has unique insight into his finances, and we are going to ask her one simple question. Eleanor looked at the paper. Stratton Holdings LLC. Boring. Harmless. This is it, isn't it? She asked. This is the whole case. This is the whole case, Sarah confirmed. Now we just have to hope she's arrogant enough to lie under oath. She is, Eleanor said, thinking of the red lipstick and cold, mocking smile. She's banking on it. The next 2 days in court were a blur of financial jargon. Accountants and forensic experts, all hired by David, testified one by one, using charts and graphs to illustrate the unprecedented and unforeseeable collapse of Vance development. Eleanor watched David. He performed his role perfectly. A broken man, a captain who had gone down with his ship. He looked at Judge Sanchez with a hangdog expression, as if begging for understanding. Kira sat behind him, a silent, supportive pillar of strength, occasionally passing him a note or a bottle of water, a perfect pantomime of loyalty and devotion. Finally, Marcus Thorne rested his case. Your Honor, the defense rests. We have proven conclusively that Mr. Vance is insolvent. Mrs. Vance's demands are unfortunately impossible to meet. Judge Sanchez sighed, glancing at the clock. Miss Jenkins, do you have a closing argument? Or shall we— The plaintiff calls one rebuttal witness, Your Honor, Sarah said, standing, her voice ringing with newfound confidence. Thorne, mid-pack of his briefcase, froze. What, Your Honor? This is procedural nonsense. The plaintiff rested her case. This is a rebuttal witness, Mr. Thorne, Sarah said smoothly, called to directly rebut the testimony of your experts regarding Mr. Vance's financial state. As his self-proclaimed chief advisor, we believe this witness has direct knowledge that contradicts your entire case. Judge Sanchez leaned forward. And who is this witness, Miss Jenkins? The plaintiff calls Miss Kira Stratton to the stand. The courtroom went silent. David went pale, a sickly greenish white. He turned to stare at Kira, eyes wide with panic. Kira, for the first time, looked utterly lost. Objection! Thorne roared, springing to his feet. Ms. Stratton is not a party to this case. This is harassment, a fishing expedition. They have no basis for this. I disagree, Mr. Thorne, Judge Sanchez said, her voice dangerously quiet. Ms. Stratton has been present at the defendant's table for the entirety of these proceedings. She identified herself to this court as the defendant's partner and chief advisor. If she is advising him, she is relevant to his financial state. Overruled. The judge looked at Kira. Mrs. Stratton, please approach the bench and be sworn in. Kira glanced at David, then at Thorne. Thorne frantically whispered, Just say you know nothing. I don't recall. That's it? Kira stood, movement stiff, robotic. The confidence she had worn like armor was gone, replaced by brittle fury. Her heels clicked loudly in the silence as she walked to the stand. She took the oath, voice barely audible. Sarah approached the witness box, calm, almost gentle. Ms. Stratton, thank you for joining us. You identified yourself to the court as Mr. Vance's partner. Is that correct? I am his romantic partner. Yes. Kira's voice was tight. And his chief advisor? Yes, I advise him. He's been through a lot. He needs my support. Of course, Sarah said, nodding. You have a background in finance, do you not? Yes. I've worked in finance. So you're familiar with corporate structures, LLCs, trusts, that sort of thing? Objection. Relevance, Thorne shouted. I'm establishing the witness's expertise as an advisor. Your Honor, Sarah said. I'll allow it. Barely. Get to the point. Miss Jenkins, the judge said. Yes, Your Honor. Sarah turned back to Kira. Ms. Stratton, you testified that you support Mr. Vance. You believe he's an honest man? The most honest man I know, Kira said, gaining a little confidence. She shot a look at Eleanor. He's a good man who was taken advantage of. Taken advantage of by whom, Mrs. Stratton? By the market? By people who didn't share his vision. I see, Sarah said. And as his advisor, you are helping him build a new vision, a new future. I am. I'm helping him get back on his feet. That's very noble of you, Sarah said. It must be difficult starting from scratch. Given that he's bankrupt. We'll manage, Kira said, chin high. Yes. I'm sure you will. Sarah took a single piece of paper from her folder and placed it on the witness stand. Mrs. Stratton, can you please identify this document for the court? Kira looked down. Her face, which had been regaining color, drained completely. She saw Stratton Holdings, LLC. It's a business registration, she stammered. What business, Mrs. Stratton? It's my business. It has nothing to do with David. A business you formed on October 14th, 2 days after Mr. Vance was served with divorce papers. Objection, Your Honor. Thorne erupted. Ms. Jenkins, you are on a very thin rope, Judge Sanchez warned. I have one final question, Your Honor. Sarah turned to Kira, voice no longer gentle. Miss Stratton, what is the business purpose of Stratton Holdings LLC? Kira froze. Her eyes darted to David, then to Thorne, who made a quick zipping motion. It's for future investments, Kira said, grasping at straws. Future investments, Sarah pressed. With what capital, Miss Stratton? You just testified Mr. Vance is bankrupt, and your own declaration of assets, which we all have, lists your net worth as negligible. So where is the money coming from? The trap was sprung. Kira looked at David, eyes wide with panic. He was no longer the suave developer. He was a cornered rat. Kira's mouth opened and closed. She had no answer. She had lied about her own assets, too. The clean name was a lie. And she had just admitted under oath to forming a company with no capital days after her bankrupt boyfriend was sued for divorce. She was trapped. Then the killing blow came, not from Sarah, but from the bench. Judge Maria Sanchez removed her glasses and polished them slowly on her black robe. The courtroom fell into a suffocating silence. The humming fluorescent light seemed deafening. David was visibly sweating. His $4,000 suit now looked like a cheap rental. Kira was pale, her red lipstick a garish slash of color. Finally, Judge Sanchez replaced her glasses, leaning forward, eyes fixed on Kira. Ms. Stratton, the judge began, her voice soft, almost conversational. I have been on this bench for 22 years. I have seen millionaires cry poverty. I have seen wives left with nothing but the clothes on their backs. I have seen a great many lies. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Mr. Thorne, she continued, not taking her eyes off Kira, is objecting on the grounds of relevance. But I find this very relevant. Ms. Jenkins has just established that you, the defendant's chief advisor, created a shell corporation with no stated purpose and no visible capital, days after his assets were to be legally reviewed by this court. She held up a hand as Thorne started to rise. Sit down, Mr. Thorne. She looked back at Kira. I am going to ask you one question, Miss Stratton, and I want you to think very, very carefully about your answer. I want you to think about the oath you took. I want you to think about the penalties for perjury and conspiracy to commit fraud in the state of North Carolina. Because you are at this moment very close to becoming a co-defendant in a criminal investigation. Kira trembled, her hands gripping the railing of the witness box. The judge leaned into her microphone. Ms. Stratton, are you, or are you not, a party to a financial arrangement with the defendant, David Vance, intended to shield assets from this divorce proceeding and, by extension, from this court? That was it. The question was a legal nuclear bomb. A yes would be an admission of conspiracy and fraud. A no would be a provable lie. Perjury. Because the LLC's timing was so precise, so damning, that no one in the room would believe her. Kira stared, mind utterly blank. The arrogance that had carried her through this ordeal, the belief in her own superior intelligence, had evaporated. She was just a common thief caught in the spotlight. She looked at David, a desperate, silent plea for help, and David Vance did what he always did. He saved himself. He turned away from her. He looked at his lawyer, Marcus Thorne, and shrugged, a tiny, almost imperceptible gesture that screamed, "She's on her own." Kira saw it. The betrayal was so swift, so total, that she let out a small, strangled gasp. He was cutting her loose. He was going to let her take the fall. She was the new anchor. She stammered. It was his idea. He told me it was legal. It was over. A shocked murmur rippled through the gallery. Marcus Thorne dropped his head into his hands. David Vance closed his eyes, his mask of composure finally crumbling into ash. Judge Sanchez's face was like granite. Ms. Stratton, you have just admitted to conspiracy to commit fraud, she said, her voice icy. Kira began to sob, Not quiet, dignified tears, but ugly, gulping sobs of terror. "No, please. I love him. He made me. He said it was the only way we could be together. He said she didn't deserve it. He said I didn't deserve it." Eleanor hadn't even realized she'd spoken aloud. Her voice cut through Kira's hysterics. Kira's head snapped up. Her tear-streaked face, twisted with hatred, finally revealed the raw, ugly motive beneath the shell of superiority. "You never did," Kira shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at Eleanor. "You were a millstone. You were weak. I did what I had to do. He deserved to be free of you." "He deserved me." "That is quite enough," Judge Sanchez said, her voice quiet but absolute. She motioned to the bailiff. "Mrs. Stratton, you are excused from the stand. Do not leave the courthouse." She then turned her gaze to David. "Mr. Vance, given this revelation, this court is freezing every known asset belonging to you, Ms. Stratton, and any entity associated with either of you, pending an immediate and full forensic audit by an independent counsel appointed by this court." "Your Honor?" "Thorne," David began. "You are silent, Mr. Thorne, or you will be held in contempt. This proceeding is adjourned. And Mr. Vance, I strongly suggest you retain a criminal defense attorney immediately." Judge Sanchez slammed her gavel. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. David didn't move. He just stared at the wall. Kira was led away by the bailiff, still sobbing. It was him. It was all him. Eleanor stood on shaky legs. Sarah put a hand on her arm to steady her. She looked at David, the man she had loved, the man who had called her his rock and then his anchor. He looked for the first time small, pathetic, hollow. She turned and, without a backward glance, walked out of the courtroom, head held high. The 6 weeks that followed were a quiet storm. The court-appointed auditor, a small, ruthless woman who looked like a librarian, tore through David and Kira's lives with the precision of a surgeon. Stratton Holdings LLC was just the tip of the iceberg. It was the designated container for the cash they were siphoning from Vance Development's debt. The auditors uncovered the truth. David hadn't suffered a market collapse. He had engineered one. He had systematically defaulted on his own loans, offloading properties at massive losses to shell companies registered under Kira's distant relatives. He bought his own assets back for pennies on the dollar, erasing his equity while claiming bankruptcy, all the while consolidating his empire under Kira's clean name. It was audacious, brilliant, and highly illegal. The audit revealed over $28 million had been hidden. While the legal storm raged, Eleanor turned her attention to a new life. She found a modest 2-bedroom apartment in the quieter, older neighborhood of Dworth. It lacked the glass and steel grandeur of Queens Road, but it was sunny, the neighbors kind. She painted the second bedroom a soft, warm yellow and, with her swollen belly making it awkward, assembled the crib herself. Instructions spread across the floor, bolts tightened one by one. When the last screw clicked into place, a surge of pride washed over her. She had done it. She had built it herself. David didn't contact her. Updates came only from Sarah. "They've turned on each other," Sarah said over coffee, just a week before Eleanor's due date. "It's spectacular. Kira is singing like a canary, claiming undue influence, that she was a victim of a coercive relationship. She's painting David as a master manipulator. She's not wrong about that part," Eleanor said, sipping her decaf. "No, but it won't save her. She was an active, willing participant. She set up the corporate structure herself. Her fingerprints are all over the wire transfers. And David? He's trying to paint her as the mastermind, the greedy, ambitious harlot who seduced him and tricked him into ruin." "The anchor defense," Eleanor murmured. "Exactly." "It's not playing well. The DA is looking at both of them for bank fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. They're going to prison, both of them." "Good," Eleanor said. It wasn't a word she used often, but it felt right. It felt just. "The settlement?" "It's not a settlement anymore," Sarah continued, sliding a document across the table. "It's a judgment. The court has seized all $28 million. After the banks and creditors are paid, the remainder is yours. And we're filing a civil suit for punitive damages. By the time this is over, they won't have enough money left to buy a bus ticket. Eleanor studied the numbers. They were staggering, life-changing. But as she looked, she realized something deeper. The money wasn't victory. The justice was. The truth exposed, the lies shattered, the mockery silenced. That was the triumph. The money was merely a consequence. "What about the house on Queen's Road?" she asked. "It's being sold at auction. The proceeds are part of the judgment." "Good," Eleanor said again, and this time she smiled. "I never liked that house anyway. The windows were too big. It always felt like I was on display." Eleanor's daughter was born on a rainy Tuesday in December. Labor was long and grueling, and in the final moments, Eleanor was terrified. She was doing it alone. The voice of Kira echoed in her mind. "You're an anchor. You just sink." But then the doctor instructed her to push, and a different instinct took over. A fierce, primal strength she hadn't known she possessed. It was the strength of a mother. When they placed the tiny, screaming baby on her chest, Eleanor burst into tears. Not of sadness or self-pity, but relief. She named her Grace, not for the religious concept, but for the secular one. Grace as elegance, as reprieve, and as the quiet strength to move forward when the world tried to break you. A few days later, Eleanor was back in her small apartment, rocking Grace in the soft yellow room, the storm finally behind them. Sarah came by that evening, not as a lawyer, but as a friend. "I brought you this," she said. Handing Eleanor a small framed newspaper clipping, Eleanor read the headline, "Queen City Developer Partner, indicted on 22 counts of fraud. Vance and Stratton face decades in prison." Below it was a photo, far from the glossy smiles of society pages. David in an ill-fitting suit, face gray and haggard, and Kira, hair disheveled, hands cuffed. A mask of defeated rage. Eleanor studied the picture for a long moment. No anger, no pity, no triumph. Just irrelevance, ghosts from a life that no longer belonged to her. "Thank you, Sarah," Eleanor said. "But I don't think I need this." She handed the clipping back. "That's their story. This," she said, looking down at the sleeping baby in her arms, "is mine." Sarah smiled. "Understood." The final judgment came through. The funds will be transferred to your new trust by the end of the month. "You're set, Eleanor. You and Grace, you're free. Free." The word still felt foreign, yet right. That night, after the last feeding, Eleanor stood by the nursery window. The rain had stopped, leaving the air clear and cold. Outside, the quiet street shimmered under warm lights from neighbors' homes. A simple, ordinary, beautiful life. Her mind wandered back to the courtroom, to the whisper meant to destroy her. "Better hope it has his eyes." She looked down at Grace. Her daughter's eyes fluttered open. They weren't David's, they weren't hers. They were new. They were their own. "It's just us, baby girl," Eleanor whispered, kissing Grace's forehead. "And we're going to be just fine." She wasn't an anchor. She was the harbor. Eleanor's journey is a testament to the power of resilience. Mocked, gaslit, and pushed to the edge, she found her strength not in revenge, but in truth. She navigated betrayal, psychological warfare, and hidden agendas, and emerged victorious. Not just in court, but in life. She transformed her greatest pain into her greatest triumph, proving that resilience is the ultimate superpower. Her new life, built with her own hands, stands as proof that even when the world tries to sink you, you can choose to rise. Justice, even when it feels impossible, is always worth fighting for. Thank you for witnessing Eleanor's story of resilience and redemption. If her journey inspired you, share it with someone who might need a reminder of their own strength. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of overcoming the odds.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.